inspections. So my question is, what do you think the possibilities are that they would allow these inspections to take place? Or the UN inspectors to go in and make sure that they're not building nuclear weapons and it's just for civilian use?
I have a friend who's a nuclear engineer, and he follows all of the technical details of this. And I'm quoting him, I'm really confident that he's accurate, that Iran is the most inspected country in the world. There is no other nuclear program that is so closely and intrusively inspected than Iran's nuclear program. But the issue for Iranians lies somewhere else, where all of this inspection by IAEA is either dismissed or twisted or spun, and what comes out the other end is always a resolution against Iran, which according to the consensus of the panelists here, and according to us, to the consensus in Iran, is that this is seen as yet another example of the foreign powers, Americans and the Europeans, trying to prevent Iran from achieving sovereignty, full sovereignty and full use of peaceful means of becoming a modern state.
Ahmad comes from Executive Intelligence Review. I'd like to ask about the latest ratcheting up of sanctions with the Treasury Department's action on March 20th, citing a couple of dozen Iranian banks, and basically telling other banks and financial institutions that if you do business with them, you're going to get the same treatment. And some people saw this as a declaration of war on Iran, and certainly this is a declaration of economic and financial war or whatever. It looks like actually to set up an economic quarantine around Iran. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that, what impact you think that will have.
Well, the banking sanctions have had an impact. They've made it much more expensive and difficult for Iranians to do business, and there is no doubt about that. However, with the price of oil what it is, Iran is finding means and ways. This is a very resilient country, a country that is used to sanctions of one sort or another for the last 30 years. So what they've done is they've moved to lesser banks. There's still banks, I won't identify which European countries, but there's still a few small European countries that have not shut down operations, so you move from the high profile to the less high profile. Of course, the United Arab Emirates remains a great clearinghouse for all sorts of laundering of Iranian transactions. You can, I shouldn't be saying this, but you can use an American credit card in Iran and it gets routed through Dubai. If there's something you really feel that you need to buy and you don't have enough cash. Iranians are clever enough to do that, and there are 400,000 Iranians in Dubai, and they run a lot of the major businesses there, so it's not that difficult. Unfortunately, I think it's also increased smuggling, it's increased corruption, it's increased a lot of things that you don't really want to increase in a country like Iran, so it's had some adverse effects. It's hurt legitimate business people more than it's hurt the Revolutionary Guard Corps, but it's one of those feel-good things. The administration can say that they're doing something. And if it's a substitute for war, for a shooting war, I suppose it's better than that.
On that point of Iraq, you mentioned that it is a substitute, or it's been treated, it's actually been sold in Congress as a substitute for war. But there is also the argument that at the end of the day, the United States and Iran are so deep into each other's spheres of influence because of Iraq, because of many other things, that the state of no war, no peace between these two countries is simply not tenable for much longer. And the sanctions is basically just kicking the can down the road because we don't know what else to do. Is there a danger in that? In the sense that if we do this for too long, we may actually end up in a very hostile situation because the additional sanctions don't seem to be too conducive towards actually getting negotiations going.
I'll let one of the other panelists answer that. I just wanted to mention, I think the Iranians have opened several bank branches in Baghdad. And what is the United States going to do about that?
These sanctions, of course, are hurting the middle class. And what do you get by removing the middle class in the country? In a country like Iran, with crony capitalism from hell, there is a middle class that is really operating outside of this old boy network, and these sanctions are crushing that middle class. what you are going to get is more power to the government. Of course, Iranians are doing a lot of business through Dubai. When I was hiking a few months ago in the mountains of Tehran with a friend of mine who has an export-import business, we met this guy, this kind of 28-year-old guy, and he's a multi-billionaire exactly because of these sanctions, because he set up an operation in Dubai, and my friend is doing his entire business through him. So this has created a few more billionaires, but eventually it's going to destroy the Iranian middle class, and I don't think that's a wise way to go if you know anything about how democracies operate and how much they rely, the democratic instinct relies on the reality of the middle class.
One thing that I'd like to mention about sanctions, and that is, you know, if we look strategically at their actual result, at the moment they don't seem to be having very much impact on the nuclear program, which is what it's meant to do. What it is doing is making a lot of Iranians very unhappy. Now, if we look 10 years down the road, one thing that we almost certainly know for sure is that Iran is going to be a nuclear power. That doesn't mean nuclear weapons power, but ask the question, or people who make these decisions should ask the question, do we want that nuclear power to be a power so isolated, so removed from kind of the norms and restrictions and that sort of thing of international treaties and that